Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We're going to do the start of a new playthrough series. We'll see how this series develops. It's going to be a little bit experimental in terms of format, but it is a series I'm calling On the Table. I've tried to launch this before, and I fucked that game up, so we did not get anything other than one episode, but we're going to try again. We're going to try to make not huge rules mistakes, and we'll see how it goes. The game is Guam, Return to Glory. This is from Compass Games. The series designer is Adam Starkweather. The game designer is Ross Mortel. This is the company scale system or company scale series. Obviously, it's a company scale game. It is fairly similar in overall mechanical direction to Starkweather's earlier Grand Tactical series, which is published by Multiman Publishing. There's already 3 games out in the series. The first is Saipan. This is Volume 2, Guam. Volume 3 is Montélimar, which takes place in southern France in 1944, actually right around the same time as Guam does, give or take a couple of weeks. Volume 4 is going to be Tinian, which will be out. It's sort of the companion game to Saipan, because Tinian and Saipan are right next to each other. That's going to be a 1-map game. Guam is a 4-map game, 6 counter sheets. Saipan is a 2-map game, 4 or 5 counter sheets. Montélimar, I think, is 4 or 5 maps. So they're all fairly big. However, I'll get to that in a minute. So in addition to 4 maps and 6 counter sheets with Guam, we get, and of course it's me, so I've had the game for 2 days and it's all punched and clipped already. We get a 56-page full-color rulebook. This rulebook is downloadable from the Compass Games website. We're not going to go through the specifics, but it's pretty attractive. I think it's reasonably clear. I guess I'll find out as we go through this. So this is going to be a learning game for me, so bear that in mind. You're not watching an expert play the game, but I will try to keep the mistakes to a minimum. Not downloadable from the Compass Games website is the scenario book. There are 7 scenarios in this game, and we can see right on page 2, we get like a really nice, this is the entire island, all 4 maps, and the colored boxes are the boundaries of the individual scenarios. So all of the scenarios, except for the campaign game, actually take place on 1 map, which is really nice. That gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of footprint. Kind of working on being able to set up multi-map games, but I'm not quite there yet. So if I showed you the rest of the room, you would know why. Also full color. It's also like the rule book on this sort of matte stock. I prefer a matte finish paper. It's very nice. I have 0 complaints about the attractiveness of the components in this game. However, I will mention that it's a little weird that they decided to kind of put setup cards in the game for the scenarios. But they're not setup cards, they're in the book. So when we get to the bigger scenarios, like scenario 5, for example, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, you really kind of have to photocopy these if you want to use them as scenario cards. And if we wanted to just use them as a list of units, then we could have done this in less space and probably cut half the size of the book. But it's a pretty attractive book, and I consider that to be a relatively minor quibble. One of the things that I'm sort of saddened to say about Compass Games is that in my relatively limited experience with them, I have been very pleased with the game designs, and I've generally been pleased with the attractiveness of the physical components. But I have not always been pleased with the degree to which those physical components and play aids are thought out by whoever does the development. So for Balance of Powers, for example, which is a game I have a pretty high opinion of, I like that game quite a bit, there's some lacks in the play aids that come with the game, and I think a need for you to do a couple of your own play aids. Now, is that a huge deal? No. It's not a huge deal here either, but it's a little thing that I noticed when setting it up. It's like, well, this is a little strange. I love setup cards. I love getting setup cards, and I got setup cards, except they have to photocopy them myself, which I can't go do right now. So what we have set up here is the Barrigada scenario. That is the entire playable area right there. It is quite a small scenario, but as you can see, the unit density is fairly high. So there's not going to be a ton of movement here. There's not a ton of terrain types. There's probably 4 or 5 different terrain types in this entire space. But it should give us a pretty decent handle on the movement to whatever extent units can maneuver in this constricted space, and the different types of combat, the fire combat and the indirect fire combat and the activations. This is a chit pull game like the Grand Tactical series. originally inspired by the game Panzer Command, many years old, from Victory Games. I don't recall off the top of my head who the designer of Panzer Command was, but I want to say that it was in turn inspired by the original Panzergruppe Guderian, which may or may not be true. I might be misremembering that. But we have divisional displays here. I've got the 77th Infantry Division, and that's the reason I hid that, because of that glare. I have the United States Army's 77th Infantry Division, some elements of that unit, up against the 48th Independent Mixed Brigade of the Empire of Japan. And I'm trying to keep that glare to a minimum. I obviously have all these displays under Plexi, and I kind of zoned off the playable area of the map with the displays to the extent that that was possible. And had I thought about it a little harder, I could have actually put the U.S. display here. And I've got the two play aids here, the charts and tables, and the TEC, terrain effects chart. And over here, we've got the turn track in that. So we've got it all laid out. I'm going to give it a shot. I think what I'm going to do here is kind of slowly go through it. I'm not sure how many episodes this is going to be, but there are 4 turns in the game. We play, this is slightly off the camera right over here, but we start in a 1300 turn of August 2nd, and we end in the night 1 turn. So we have essentially 2-hour turns during the day and then 2 turns at night. Because of the nature of this particular campaign, there's a decent amount of specific things that happen at night, like the Japanese can move out of U.S. fire zones and stuff like that. So there is no, even though this is a series, there is no series rule book as such. The whole rules for the game are in here, and they're kind of revising this as we go. This mark here indicates changes to the whole system, and we'll see those throughout the rule book, and those are intended to apply to previous games in the series too. The Montelimar rule book, volume 3 in the series, is available for download on Compass Games' website, as I think I mentioned, the Guam rulebook is, but not the scenarios. The Vassal module I have glanced at, looks pretty good if you're into that. So let's fire this up and see where we go. I'm really extremely curious and somewhat excited about this system. I want to see how it plays. I always wanted to play GTS, but was not really able to get it to the table, and the one game that I really wanted to play, The Greatest Day, I never managed to get my hands on. So maybe I will at some point, and maybe there'll be video on that. But in the meantime, we have a video of Guam Return to Glory. So stay tuned for episode 1. This has been the introductory video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. If you're enjoying this, if you're interested in the series, please like the video. It helps the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment. Do all that stuff. I'll see you next time.